The sun shone warmly over the quiet town as little Mary ran barefoot in the backyard, her laughter echoing in the air. She was an 8-year-old girl with bright eyes and an endless curiosity for the world around her. Her favorite place was under the old mango tree, where she often sat with her storybooks, imagining adventures far beyond her small town. Mary was the only child of Pastor Gabriel and Pastor Sarah, a couple deeply devoted to their faith and community. They were not just religious leaders, but also pillars of support for many in the town. People came to them for guidance, for prayers, for comfort. In the mornings, Mary would wake up to the soft murmur of her father's prayers in the living room, his deep voice filling their home with peace. Her mother, always graceful and warm, would hum hymns as she prepared breakfast. Their house was a place of faith, filled with love, kindness, and the constant presence of Scripture. But their dedication to the church also meant they were busy, very busy. From sunrise to late at night, Pastor Gabriel and Pastor Sarah had endless responsibilities. There were sermons to prepare, church meetings to attend, families to counsel, and prayers to lead. Though they loved Mary dearly, their time with her was limited. A loving yet busy home. "Mary, have you packed your school bag?" her mother asked one morning, adjusting her headscarf as she hurriedly prepared for a church visit. "Yes, Mommy," Mary said, tucking her books inside. "Good girl," her mother smiled, planting a kiss on her forehead. "Your father and I will be back before bedtime, okay?" Mary nodded, used to this routine. She understood that her parents' work was important, not just for their family, but for the entire community. But there were times when she wished they could stay home more, just to read her a bedtime story or sit with her under the mango tree. Still, she never complained. Her parents were doing God's work, and she wanted to be a good daughter, obedient, respectful, and understanding. The decision to hire a tutor. As Mary grew older, her schoolwork became more challenging. With her parents always busy, they worried she wasn't getting enough help with her studies. One evening, during dinner, Pastor Gabriel looked at his wife thoughtfully. "Sarah, I think we need to find someone to help Mary with her homework. She's a bright child, but she needs guidance." His wife nodded in agreement. "Yes, I was thinking the same. But who can we trust?" A moment of silence passed before Pastor Gabriel smiled. "What about Brother Di?" Sarah's face lit up. "Uncle Di? That's a wonderful idea. He's been in our church for years. He's devoted, responsible, and great with children." Uncle Di, as they affectionately called him, was a respected church member, always willing to help. He was known for his kindness, his commitment to the church, and his strong faith. He had been a close friend of the family for years, someone they trusted without question. "Mary likes him too," Sarah added. "I'm sure she'll be comfortable with him." And so, without hesitation, they made the decision. That night, as Mary lay in bed, her mother stroked her hair gently. "Mary, from tomorrow, Uncle D will be helping you with your schoolwork after class. He's very good with children, and we know he will help you learn." Mary smiled sleepily. "Okay, Mommy." She had no reason to be worried. After all, if her parents trusted him, then surely he was safe. But sometimes, even the safest places can hide the deepest dangers. The next afternoon, as Mary stepped off the school bus, she noticed a familiar figure standing in front of her house. "Mary!" Uncle D called with a warm smile. She smiled back. She had always liked Uncle Di. He was friendly, well-respected, and always had a kind word for everyone at church. She had seen him lead prayers, organize youth programs, and even help fix broken chairs in the church hall. Her parents trusted him completely, so when he was chosen as her tutor, Mary wasn't surprised. The first lesson. Inside the house, Uncle D had already set up his books at the dining table. Mary placed her school bag down and sat across from him. "How was school today?" he asked as he opened a notebook. "It was good," she replied, swinging her feet under the chair. "Great. Let's start with some math, shall we?" Mary enjoyed the first few lessons. Uncle D explained things in a way that made learning fun. He never got impatient, even when she struggled with a problem. He would smile and say, "You're a smart girl, Mary. I know you can do this." She felt proud whenever he praised her, At first, everything was normal. The first signs of change. Then, small things started happening. One evening, as she was writing in her notebook, she felt Uncle Di's presence closer than usual. He leaned over her, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "You are such a smart girl, Mary," he said softly. She smiled, but something about the way he said it felt different. A few days later, he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "You are very special," he whispered. Mary felt a strange flutter in her stomach. It wasn't the kind of warmth she felt when her parents hugged her. This was different. Then one evening, as they were finishing a lesson, Uncle D placed his hand on her lap. He left it there for several minutes while continuing to talk about her homework. Mary didn't know what to do. She wanted to move, but she also didn't want to seem rude. After all, this was Uncle D, someone her parents trusted. She told herself it was nothing. Maybe she was imagining things. But deep down, something felt wrong. The seed of doubt. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replayed the way Uncle D had touched her. Why did it make her feel uncomfortable? She wanted to talk to her mother about it, but every time she thought about it, doubt crept in. Would her mother believe her? Would she say, "Oh, Mary, don't be silly. Uncle D is like family"? And so she stayed silent. Mary had always loved school. She enjoyed her classes, playing with her friends, and riding the school bus home every afternoon. But something was different now. Each day, as the bus got closer to her house, a tight knot formed in her stomach. Uncle D would be waiting. At first, she convinced herself she was imagining things. After all, he had always been kind. He was her tutor, her parents' trusted friend. If he was doing something wrong, wouldn't her parents know? But with every lesson, the uneasy feeling grew. The moments that didn't feel right. It started with small things that seemed normal at first. One afternoon, as Mary worked on a difficult math problem, Uncle D placed his hand on her shoulder. "You're such a smart girl, Mary," he said, his hand resting a little too long. Another time, as she sat beside him at the dining table, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're very special," he whispered. Mary smiled politely, but felt an odd shiver down her spine. Then, one evening, he placed his hand on her lap. She froze. It stayed there still, unmoving. She tried to focus on her notebook, pretending she didn't notice. After what felt like forever, he finally pulled his hand away and continued teaching as if nothing had happened. That night, Mary lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She wanted to believe she was overthinking. But if everything was normal, why did she feel so strange? The warning at school. A week later, during a class lesson, Mary's teacher, Miss Rachel, stood at the front of the room and held up a colorful chart. "Today," she said, "we're going to talk about personal safety." Mary listened as Miss Rachel pointed to different parts of the body and explained. "These are private areas. No one should ever touch you here, and if they do, you must tell a trusted adult." Mary felt her heart race. She looked at the chart, then back down at her hands. Her stomach twisted into knots as she realized those were the same areas Uncle D had touched. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way he sat too close. The way his hand lingered on her lap. The way he whispered that she was special. She wasn't imagining it. Something was wrong. A child's silent fear. That afternoon, as the school bus neared her house, Mary's hands felt clammy. She wanted to run, to hide, to tell someone. But who would believe her? Uncle D was loved by everyone. He was respected, trusted. If she told her parents, would they even believe her? Would they think she was lying? Would they be angry? As she stepped off the bus, she saw him waiting at the door, smiling. She swallowed the lump in her throat and forced a small smile back. "Welcome home, Mary," he said, holding the door open. She hesitated for a second before stepping inside. Mary had never kept secrets from her parents before. But now, every afternoon, as she walked into the house and sat with Uncle D for her lessons, she carried a heavy secret inside her. She no longer felt excited to learn. Instead, she counted the minutes until the lesson was over. Uncle Di's touches became more frequent, his hand on her back as she read, his fingers brushing against hers longer than necessary. His whispers of "You're my special girl." She hated it. She wanted to scream, to push him away, but a small voice in her head told her that she couldn't. What if no one believes me? What if Mommy and Daddy get mad? What if Uncle D says I'm lying? So, she stayed silent. The words that changed everything. One evening, after another uncomfortable lesson, Mary sat alone in her room, hugging her teddy bear. Her parents had come home late, as usual, busy with their church duties. But before bedtime, her mother had gently stroked her hair and whispered, "Mary, always remember if anything ever bothers you, you can tell us. We will always believe you." Mary's heart pounded. Did her mother know? No, how could she? But the words stirred something inside her. A small spark of hope. Maybe if she told them, they wouldn't be angry. Maybe they would believe her. The note that spoke for her. That night, Mary lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She wanted to tell her mother everything. But when she imagined saying the words out loud, "Uncle D makes me uncomfortable," her throat tightened. She couldn't do it. But she could write it. Slowly, she sat up, grabbed a piece of paper from her school bag, and picked up a pencil. Her hands trembled as she wrote, "Mommy, Daddy, I need to tell you something. Uncle D makes me feel uncomfortable. He touches me in ways that scare me. Please don't let him come anymore." Tears blurred her vision as she folded the paper. She needed to hide it somewhere safe, somewhere she knew her mother would find it. Then she saw it. Her mother's Bible. Carefully, she slipped the note between the pages, knowing her mother read it every night before bed. Then she crawled back into bed, pulled the blanket over her head, and whispered a silent prayer. "Please, God, let them believe me." Parental lesson from Part 4. Children may not always be able to speak out loud. Encourage them to communicate in any way they feel comfortable through writing, drawing, or even gestures. Reassure your child often. Let them know, no matter what, I will always believe you. Even if nothing is wrong, your words create a safe space for honesty. Be present. No matter how busy life gets, take time every day to check in with your child, not just about school, but about how they feel. That evening, the house was peaceful. The smell of warm dinner filled the air as Mary's mother, Pastor Sarah, prepared the evening meal. Pastor Gabriel sat at the dining table, reading through his sermon notes. Everything felt normal. But Mary wasn't normal. She sat quietly, pushing her food around her plate, her heart pounding as she waited. Did Mommy find the note yet? Would she believe me? What if she doesn't say anything? After dinner, as was her routine, Pastor Sarah picked up her Bible from the bedside table. She flipped through the pages, preparing to pray until something slipped out. A folded piece of paper. She frowned, unfolding it carefully. As she read the words, her face changed. First confusion, then shock, then something deeper, an emotion Mary had never seen before. Gabriel, her voice was barely a whisper. Pastor Gabriel looked up. "What is it, Sarah?" His wife didn't speak. She simply handed him the note. A heavy silence filled the room. Mary felt frozen. This is it, she thought. They know now. Her father's expression darkened as he finished reading. He turned to Mary, his voice shaking. "Mary, is this true?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, Daddy." A choked sound escaped Pastor Sarah's lips as she rushed forward, wrapping her daughter in a tight embrace. "Oh, my baby, why didn't you tell us sooner?" Mary sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I was scared. I thought you wouldn't believe me." Her father's fists clenched, his body shaking with anger not at Mary, but at the man who had betrayed their trust. Without another word, he stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked outside. That night, Mary's mother held her close, whispering over and over, "You did the right thing. We believe you. You are safe now." For the first time in a long time, Mary felt like she could breathe. Part 6. The Aftermath. The next day, Pastor Gabriel called a meeting with the church elders. He demanded that Uncle D be removed from all church duties immediately. But, as expected, Uncle D denied everything. "Pastor, you know me. I would never harm Mary. This is a misunderstanding." But Pastor Gabriel's voice was firm. "My daughter has no reason to lie. She is a child, and as her father, I will protect her at all costs." The church elders listened in silence. Some were shocked, others whispered doubts. But Pastor Gabriel didn't care what anyone thought. His only concern was Mary. Uncle D was dismissed from the church, and his access to their home was permanently cut off. But the whispers began. People noticed Uncle D was no longer leading the choir. They noticed how Mary's parents avoided him. Soon, rumors spread through the congregation. One Sunday after service, Mary overheard two women whispering, "Did you hear? Pastor Gabriel removed Brother D from his duties." "Why?" "No one knows for sure, but I heard something happen in their house." Mary quickly walked away, her heart pounding. "At home?" she asked her mother. "Mommy, what if people don't believe me?" Pastor Sarah knelt beside her, holding her hands. "Mary, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. And if anyone dares to doubt you, they will answer to us and to God." Mary nodded, but the fear remained. Part 7. The Road to Healing. Mary's parents knew that their daughter had been deeply hurt, not just by what had happened, but by the weight of carrying it alone. So they made another decision. "Mary," her father said gently one evening, "we are taking you to see someone who can help you heal. Her name is Mrs. Margaret, and she helps children who have been through difficult things." "Mary," her father said gently one evening, "we are taking you to see someone who can help you heal. Her name is Mrs. Margaret, and she helps children who have been through difficult things." At first, Mary didn't want to go. The idea of talking to a stranger about what had happened scared her. But Mrs. Margaret wasn't scary. She was kind. She didn't force Mary to speak. Instead, she gave her crayons and paper and said, "Draw whatever you want." For a long time, Mary only drew pictures of trees, flowers, and the sun. But one day, she finally spoke. She told Mrs. Margaret about the first time she felt uncomfortable, about how she was too scared to say anything, about how she had written the note. "You are very brave, Mary," Mrs. Margaret said. "What happened to you was not your fault." But speaking out, that took real courage. Those words stayed with Mary. Slowly, she began to feel lighter. The nightmares became less frequent. She started to laugh again, play with her friends, and enjoy her books. One evening, as she sat with her parents after dinner, her father took her hand and said, "Mary, I want you to know something. What happened to you was terrible, but it does not define you. You are strong, and we are so proud of you." Tears filled Mary's eyes, but this time, they weren't from fear. They were from relief. Her family had made a new promise to one another to always listen, to always believe, and to always protect one another. It didn't erase the pain, but it made her feel less alone. And step by step, she began to heal. Final lessons for parents. Believe your child. When a child speaks up, always take them seriously. Your belief gives them the strength to heal.